Today's talk, pre-Tesla earnings on Wednesday, the 23rd of October 2019, is focused on Bob Lutz capitulating. It turns out that Elon Musk and company has been able to outsell all of the major makes of Europe. And this has prompted Bob Lutz to change his tune relative to Tesla and its potential future success. So that's the focus of our show today. We also get into one other issue, which is what the break-even numbers look like when we look in China. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. As you know, we have, and also wanted to note that if you like our show, please take time to like and subscribe. Definitely has a big impact. And Patreon support is also greatly appreciated. So today's talk is kind of interesting. We have our ongoing Bob Lutz series, which is focused on just the whole idea that Bob Lutz is a former auto executive, and many of the thoughts and processes that he had developed are continuing on in the industry relative to a lot of things that are done. And this includes what's going on in the electric space. We had a chance to see an article, I believe it was in Teslarati, but it may have been Clean Technica, over the last few days, in which Bob Lutz was a member of a panel. And one of the things, so there are a bunch of facts that he presented in his conversation about Tesla that we wanted to cover today. The first fact that he put forward was that the genius of Musk was offering an expensive EV versus the cheapest possible car. So, as you all know, when it came to EVs, GM had first put out a low-cost vehicle, canceled it, and then as Elon Musk started getting going, Bob Lutz spearheaded the effort to restart work in the EV space. And the initial Volt, now Bolt, were the answers that were provided. And we've frequently talked about the fact that it was a shame that that GM chose not to put out a Cadillac version of the SUV with the 248-mile engine that was there. So what he also indicated is that along these lines is the fact that we thought EV-oriented types would be price-only oriented and really couldn't afford luxury vehicles. So in essence, what he was saying was that for people that are environmentally inclined, the industry thought was that these folks would be extremely price sensitive and would not be interested in premium quality vehicles. The second data point that he pointed to, and the reason why we wanted to do the show today, is that Tesla is now outselling all the big names at the 7 Series BMW level. So, what we read about last year was the fact that Tesla had just about eclipsed every manufacturer in terms of outselling one brand. But Bob was making the point that from his numbers, Tesla is now outselling all of the major makes in Europe combined at the 7 Series level. And I've been doing a lot of research on this over time, and I think his statistics are just a little bit off, but I guess I can't argue with it. I know, you might want to do some research on this as well. But if you look at the 7 Series, the bottom of the 7 Series is an $89,000 car. The top line performance Model 3 is, I want to say, late 70s if you put everything on it. So if you look at the growth in the Model 3 sales and then you add in the X and S, I suppose this could exceed all the numbers of the biggest vehicles being sold. But it's hard to imagine. But if this is actually occurring, Tesla's doing way better than even we had expected or anticipated. So it might be worth noting. So bottom line is that's very big news if true. And then the final sort of general thought that he put forward is something that he said is, hindsight is 2020. We should have tossed the 248-mile range in a Cadillac body rather than the small vehicle size that they chose. And I was kind of surprised. I was basically surprised, at this development. It just seemed kind of strange that he would come out with all these positive comments referencing the genius of Elon. And another thing that was noteworthy is during all these conversations, he didn't mention at any point his primary arguments that he'd made against Tesla was, number one, it going bankrupt relatively soon. And he also didn't mention the conversation of the fact that Tesla doesn't have anything that the other manufacturers don't have. So one would have to agree with this portion of the argument, basically, that Tesla does have something unique, and there are all these major makes who are losing sales on premium vehicles to Tesla in the process. And yes, indeed, there are a large number of people that have resources that are making the Tesla choice. And, certainly it's an EV issue, but what he didn't point out was there's also a performance issue relative to electric that Tesla brings forward. He didn't mention it in this article, but he has mentioned it in the past, that the Model X is a good car and that it performs well. And so if you combine the performance relative to sales with the actual performance of the vehicle, with actually the look of the vehicle, one would have to argue that this is actually a boon for Tesla. We particularly wanted to jump into this discussion because with earnings coming in, there are some folks that are going to be actually making decisions about whether to buy or sell the stock or hedge their positions, et cetera. And our feeling is this, that, this is an opportunity for perhaps folks to get on the bandwagon before Tesla's stock severely spikes, because there is the possibility that the right combination of the China story combined with stories like this, where the numbers are solid and increasing in places like Europe where there are a lot of wealthy folks, that it's an opportunity to get involved with Tesla and be confident in your involvement based on the numeric trends that are going on. So I have to say, so we've sort of gone through the core logic and comments that Bob shared, and I have to say I'm very, very surprised. I kind of expected him to hold true to his guns, but he's actually gotten into the fact that there's a real need for the major makes, to come after Tesla with luxury caliber vehicles, which they have not done in the past. And so I kind of am also intrigued by this because I guess Cadillac hasn't taken on that train in the United States yet, but we're actually seeing this solution being offered in Europe. And we just find it interesting that the Europeans and the Japanese are getting sort of an effort from luxury makes that we're not getting in the United States, and the sales are reflective of that. So hats off to Tesla if the numbers that Bob is pointing out are hitting, and we're kind of excited because we're heading to earnings now, and we actually get news on China. The next thing we wanted to sort of rotate into is something we call the break-even numbers when it comes to what's going on with Tesla China. There's been a discussion about 1,000 vehicles a week through Christmas as a number that's out there. From our estimate, for a facility that size with a couple of thousand employees that you have to pay, there's, wow, amazing. We just had an amazing comment pop up, which I'll deal with at the end, but our friend from Chile made some really good comments, and we've agreed to avoid comments until we get to our 15-minute mark, so I'll do that now. So what I really wanted to get into is the fact that at post-earnings, the stock could actually be very explosive up. As usual, Tesla usually enters earnings and the stock price falls, and then we have all the institutions read the analyst reports that say buy the stock, and it ends up being a buying opportunity. I think that if somebody like Bob Lutz is capitulating, we could actually see some very interesting numbers in the positive direction, especially given new developments like China that are coming on. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this comes out on Wednesday. We look forward to doing a show post numbers after we're able to gather the input of what's going on. But hats off to Bob Lutz for his willingness to embrace the fact that when you see those sales numbers and you're not only having sales numbers, you're getting numbers relative to the best educated and wealthiest consumers, you have to start to, move forward with your thinking and embrace that, which he hasn't done in 2 or 3 years. But we're suddenly seeing this shift that's going on. The next question is, while he's shifting in his logic stream, what's going on with, senior leadership of these companies, particularly GM? Are they going to do something that allows them to do more? Sort of the next item that we wanted to get to is, there's a comment that popped up about Gigafactory 3 and what do we know new about the battery situation there. We kind of brought up the whole issue of the break-even point being at a certain level, and we think it's between 2,000 and 3,000 vehicles per week. And those batteries really can't come from the U.S. in the Gigafactory, because the fact that Tesla is now elongating the delivery times for new deliveries suggests clearly that there is a strong demand going on that Tesla's having a hard time meeting. So we did get the comment/question regarding what's new on those batteries, and there's conflicting data points. On one hand, there's a bunch of journalists that have talked about an LG battery being what Tesla's chosen to use. On the other side is Elon articulating that the batteries would likely come from the U.S., Japan, and from China. He didn't say in what trajectory order this might occur, but those are the answers that we have on the table currently. And as we get more info, hopefully tomorrow, we'll get more info as he's able to speak after the quiet period. So, and by the way, just a reminder, one of the things about Tesla / any company heading into earnings is that 2 weeks prior to earnings, all companies enter what's called a quiet period, where senior management isn't allowed to make potentially stock-moving comments, which would be perceived as against the law, and potentially those offenses are punishable rather severely. So hats off to Elon for not doing crazy tweets, and also maintaining the integrity of what the SEC wants to see happen. We're going to close out our formal comments and then get back to the questions that were posed during the show. To sort of do a quick look at SpaceX. I had a chance to chat with somebody this week who's a senior executive and at NASA, And we had kind of an interesting conversation. The first was, I don't know if all of you realize this, but after the incident where Elon was smoking weed, there was a $5 million effort from the folks at NASA to have retraining done to make sure all workers at SpaceX know of the no drug policy relative to the security clearance required to work on projects with Tesla. SpaceX is sort of having an argument with the head of NASA regarding the fact that currently there's no U.S. way to get astronauts up to the space center, and Elon has been talking about a giant rocket to Mars a lot more than this paid-for solution to the space center. And so, we think there's going to be more movement by Elon and SpaceX to get this done, and there's a lot of money being spent to facilitate that. The other sort of data points that came up were that there's a senator, evidently from Alabama, who is very forceful in making sure that the jobs are preserved in the rocketry zone there. So he pointed out that the budget for NASA tends to be sort of in good shape based on the political support they have that generates the jobs there. So initiatives, so NASA is not shutting down, and it's a priority to keep those jobs. So we look forward to spending still occurring in order to get it up there. The other note, as you all know, is one of the reasons why SpaceX exists and is doing well is the fact that with the reusable rockets, their costs are perhaps half to a third of competitors, and so therefore they can offer flights for half the cost of competitors, and cost-cutting measures like this enable them to do more with less. And so they look forward to the participation with Tesla in this fashion, or Elon Musk in this fashion, and SpaceX. So let us bounce back to some of the comments that were shared thus far. We have our visitor from Chile who pointed out there's a bunch of soldiers outside, and he's watching our show. We appreciate your doing so, and we're impressed that, given the circumstances, you're choosing to do so. And thanks for joining us, and we're happy to sort of field questions in this part of the show. As we pointed out, earnings come out tomorrow, along with a whole bunch of news that we're looking forward to reporting on. Sometimes there's a canary in the coal mine phenomenon, and we felt like having an opportunity to dive into what Bob Lutz had to say and how this affects the thinking of everyone, can be good. And it's a rare day to have Bob Lutz making positive comments about Tesla and positive comments about Elon Musk, even talking about his genius relative to the choice he made to put, very high quality luxury vehicles on the road in a space where a lot of other companies have chosen to put the cheapest vehicle possible, given the cost of the battery. So I have to admit that when I looked at the BMW i3, it's still a late 30s, early 40s vehicle, which is kind of pricey. But if you look at the body on it, it's really not an X5 or the body of a 7 Series to go with the short range that it has. So I guess I would. Interesting. Yeah. Thanks for the comment there, Brent, regarding Autoline shutting off the ability to chat while Bob Lutz was on. That's interesting. Yeah. I guess the anger anticipation might have been rather intense there. So, at any rate, we're looking forward to our next conversation coming up tomorrow post earnings. It'll likely end up being Thursday, but we're expecting the stock to move dramatically And as you see it in motion tomorrow, just remember what we pointed out, which is that covered calls, way to go if you actually want to make some money and while you minimize your risk, or at least hedge it, because Tesla has a habit of very large movements at these times. And if you're exposed with a large amount of cash, it's a good idea to anticipate and be prepared for what I think is going to be some dramatic movements in stock price. At any rate, I haven't seen any new big comments or questions pop up at this point in our show, so we're going to just jump into our health tips for the day and then call it an end. I recently had a chance to meet someone who's a cancer survivor, and we ended up getting into an interesting conversation about eating processes relative to the history of human beings. So one of the issues that he shared was that, I was actually very surprised by this. What he pointed out was, if you think of an orange, part of the process of nature was for you to eat the orange and get the juice out of it, and all the rest of the orange was designed to slow down the delivery of sugar to your system. The way we consume is to simply take the juice and leave all the rest of the pulp, etc. And he pointed out that this is actually really not nature's plan, and it's fairly unhealthy. So, I thought that was kind of interesting. I didn't, think about eating habits relative to fruit and vegetables that are take the juice, leave the remainder, and the fact that the remainder actually is an important part of what we should be consuming relative to fiber, etc. So I wanted to throw that in as our health tip for the day. So I wanted to, thanks for the comment there, Yogi B, regarding fiber being important, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. Wanted to note, don't forget your 25, good point. Thaddeus, excellent point. When will there be access to the private stock over at SpaceX available? That's a question I want to ask all of you. If you could just share, are you interested in SpaceX stock? Because I actually have some ties to Silicon Valley, and there's actually a very active secondary market for this kind of stuff. And if you want me to dig into information about stock in SpaceX, I'd be happy to do so if there are those of you that are interested. So that is, I'll note you made that comment, and I look forward to, thanks for the comment, Kurt. I'll look forward to doing some research in this zone, because there's a very active market for access to shares pre-IPO. And, I could definitely talk with some friends about finding out about this. And, we could include a conversation about this in a future show. So, any rate, we're in our close down mode here. Don't forget, don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours to let the food digest. Remember, 25 leg lifts prior to going to bed will make sure that you strengthen those quad muscles, reducing potential knee damage. Interesting. Thank you very much, Kurt. Any rate, in German we say Tschüss, mach's gut. Wie geht's, wie steht's noch? Alles frei beiden. In French we say au revoir, lehitraot. In Hebrew, choda hafez. Farsi, hejdu. Thanks to our friends in Sweden. Ni hao ma, Chinese, Zdravstvuyte, Russian, and in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful day, and we look forward to our next conversation. And bye for now.